Hello, everyone. This is Sarah Wagner, and I'm very excited to welcome you to this webinar on making a difference with the European Chamber Cross-Industry Mentor Initiative. And I'm more than thrilled that I have the opportunity to moderate today's session on the impact of mentoring and how mentoring can actually accelerate success and build confidence and leadership skills. And now, before we jump right into it, I would like to give the floor to Jörg Wuttke, the President of the European Chamber and Vice President and Chief Representative of BASF China. Jörg, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me today. It's a real pleasure. As you know, when I was invited, I was thinking about what to say, and I actually remember when we founded the Chamber in 2000, it was 51 members sitting around a table with the ambassador, and frankly, all of them were male. So when I was taking over the Chamber last year, I heard from the initiative from Charlotte and Rachel. I was very pleased that this actually is a topic, and there are ways and means in order to rectify the situation, in order to give us a much better authenticity. So Rachel is possibly known to most of you. She was on the board until recently, until she moved, I think, to Japan, though today she is in England. Rachel has a distinguished career. She is a war correspondent, so don't muck around with her. She was in Afghanistan, among other places, and had been a very strong supporter in the European Chamber in China for a couple of years, not only on panels, but also in meetings. And I'm very happy that she was one of the inspiring forces in order to get this off the ground. And then, of course, we have our very own Charlotte Roule. She is Vice President of the European Chamber. She's based in Shanghai. And also for her, from a totally different angle, she's a role model. It takes a lot to come from a small village in southern France, Marciac, to run ENGIE in China. That just shows the ability and the grit that this lady shows. So very happy the two of them got this off the ground. I remember when I joined BASF in 1996, our board member at that time was based in Hong Kong, and he made it a point to all of us that were male and sitting around the table representing BASF in China. He says, guys, we need women. We have to broaden the kind of view on things. We have to definitely think with the other half of the brain. And he managed this in a very short period of time. And now we have even a board member globally for BASF, and she was one of those that was promoted at that time. So it takes a while, but it is there, and definitely to the benefit of companies as well as other kinds of organizations. Now, this initiative from Charlotte and Rachel started last year, I guess. 9 people volunteered in order to be mentors. I'm one of the lucky guys, and then we had our mentees selected. It was a great process with a very surprising, very positive, strong lineup of candidates, and then we had the challenge of choosing them. But I think it worked quite well, and it worked quite well for many of us, despite the fact that COVID really derailed a lot of these possible meetings. To me, mentor meeting mentee means really face-to-face and not really being bound down by digital forces. Anyhow, to me, this kind of leadership that we would like to have is, again, broadening, kind of different decision-making, educate us, male also to listen. It's very important for companies to have this female kind of commitment of it. And who am I talking about is, of course, the leader of my own country is female. Angela Merkel has been in office for 15 years, and I think that puts to rest the case that women can't lead. So it's a two-way process. It's not just the mentor talking to the mentee. It's also the mentor open-minded, hopefully learning from the mentee, listening, getting the knowledge, and gaining respect. And that's why I'm very happy that this is not a one-off. This is going to continue, and this is why you're here today, listening to Charlotte and Rachel, and together with Sarah in order to get to know the next step. I'm very privileged to continue with my mentee. It's Gloria Zhou from BP. She's the planning boss of BP here in China. And we will go live and tell you how we think we can manage this on the 18th of September. So with this, enjoy the show, and I wish you good luck.
Well, thank you very much, Jörg, for these very insightful introductory words and the presentation of this stellar duo that we have here today. Also, again, a very warm welcome from my side. Again, I'm Sarah Wagner. I'm a project manager at GIZ, which is a chamber member, of course. And I was delighted to be invited here today to moderate the session, because this topic of empowerment and women empowerment in particular is really personally very close to my heart. I'm myself a founder of a podcast that features inspiring diversity leaders, and I'm also about to publish a book that helps young ambitious women to unleash their potential in the workspace. Now, talking about unleashing, today with this session, we really want to show you how the European Chamber mentoring program helps female leaders that are in the mid and senior management level to maximize their potential and really break this bottleneck that they may experience in their career path. And I'm very thrilled to be virtually joined for this discussion by the two power ladies that were just presented. So Charlotte Roule, the CEO of ENGIE China, and also Rachel Morarjee, director of the Economist Corporate Network, and of course, former board member of the chamber. So, hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
And before we jump right into it, very quickly, what we will discuss in the next hour. So firstly, we'd really like to give you an overview as to what this cross-industry mentor initiative really is. Perhaps not everyone has heard about it yet, since it just started last year. And we want to explain how it is really special from other mentoring programs out there. Then we want to have a look at how it facilitates female leadership development within the chamber community and how it can add value to your career. And at last, hoping that you will then be convinced, of course, to join the mentoring program, we will tell you what kind of profile of women we are looking for and provide you with all the necessary details that you will need to apply. Now, very quickly, a few rules regarding the session. We would really like to make this as interactive as possible, and hence we encourage you to make use of the question and answer box that you see here on the right. So if you have questions, comments throughout the session, please don't wait until the end, post them right away, and I will make sure and try my utmost to cater for them during the conversation with Charlotte and Rachel. And then if you do have, in the end, any other remaining questions, do not worry. This is actually just the first out of 3 webinars, so this is a whole trilogy. Next week, we will discuss the topic of mentorship with current mentors and mentees and share their lessons learned and experiences from the first cycle. And if then there are still remaining questions, we are also excited to announce that in the course of the week, the entire information will be uploaded to the website, the link of which we will shortly announce. Now, let's jump into it. And allow me to be the devil's advocate here in this room. I was wondering, Rachel, why do we even need such a mentoring program for female leaders?
Well, so Jörg very aptly put that when he first joined the chamber, it was a white men's talking shop. And, you know, I think, so there are a few reasons why we wanted to start this program. One is obviously to have the leadership of the chamber and the leadership of different companies representative of the actual workforce. And in China, as you see in most places in the world, China actually has very high female labor force participation, but an even higher drop-off rate. They call it leakage of the pipeline. So as people start moving up to senior management at each level, more and more women drop out. And it's partly to do with family demands. In China, actually, the family demands tend to be less about young children and more to do with parents. But it's partly external stuff and it's partly internal. I think it's a sense of looking around and seeing, well, hang on, I look at who the leaders are and they don't necessarily all look like Charlotte. Many of them look male. There's a sense, you know, you tend to have to come from a P&L background. You need to have managed a profit and loss. You need to have been in a sales role. You need to be doing active jobs, which are 24/7, 365 days a year. A lot of women don't feel that that's possible. And so what starts to happen is somewhere between the ages of 30 to 45, which is the time of the age group that we pitch this thing at, women start to disappear from the workforce. And that's bad for companies, because you're obviously losing a lot of talent that you've invested in, that you've trained. But it also means that the management is disconnected from the wider workforce. And just a personal note, I had a very big career, as Jorg notes, but I followed my husband to Russia before I moved back to China, and I was 40. I had a child, and when I came back into the world of work in China, there was just nothing. There were no support, there was no training programs. There were lots of things aimed at women aged 20 to 25. And there were no real sources of support, very few avenues of advice as to how I should build my career, how I should balance the different demands on my time. And I did find mentors externally, not necessarily in my own office, although at the time I was working at Brunswick, which has a lot of a communications consultancy that has a lot of powerful women. So there were a lot of women in other offices who helped me. But I think one of the reasons that we wanted to do a cross-industry mentoring program, where you go to other companies, is this is modeled on something called the 30% Club in London. And this will be my final point. The 30% Club was set up to try and get 30% of women on the boards of listed companies on the FTSE 100 and 500. And the 30% number comes because when you have a group of people around the table, if you have a minority, whether that's a woman or someone who's Chinese or someone who's white or someone who's black, that person becomes the white woman, the black man, and they don't become Sarah, Rachel, Jorg, or Charlotte. And they're not seen as an individual. But once there are 30% of you in a room, then your voice tends to be just seen on the basis of your point, the points you're making alone. And so there was a huge push to get more women on boards. And then when they started looking at getting more women on boards in England, they realized that actually there weren't enough women coming up the executive pipeline to fill these board roles. So you could get non-executive directors who perhaps retired, but like people within the companies weren't making it to the senior levels to be able to reach the management board. And that prompted a debate as to what was happening. And they realized that within companies, when you were assigned a mentor, there were usually a lot of political considerations, a lot of issues around how you've been perceived before. And it was very difficult to be seen objectively as an individual. And so the 30% Club set up a cross-industry mentoring initiative so that you could be mentored by somebody from another company who perhaps had similar skills. So we matched people who had a tax background with CFOs, people who had a strategy background with CEOs. And our aim here is to bring women who are already in senior management up into the executive committee level. And also for the chamber to groom a cohort of people who can be future leadership for the chamber, but also understand what the chamber can deliver to them and their careers and feel a commitment to China-European relations. And I'll stop there.
Wonderful. That was a very comprehensive answer. Before you go on, Charlotte, do you want to add anything to this?
Well, I think Rachel touched upon very widely. So just maybe one or two additional things about the cross-industry. This is something we saw last year as being very fruitful, because indeed at the EU Chamber, if you take a given sector, obviously we work together in working group, but we can be competitors. So at least we avoid this issue by going through cross-industry. We are also facing similar issues, and typically the question of communication with an EU headquarter is something that can be developed throughout the mentorship program. And overall, what I would like to stress was something that was highlighted by Rachel as well, is the question of commitment to China, commitment to Europe. We want really to support women in going to the next step in the ladder, but with this commitment to China. Just to give you an idea, last year we had an application from someone who had been there for, let's say, 1 or 2 years, if I remember well, in China, and was about to leave in the coming year. This is not the type of profile we are looking for. We are really looking to support, again, the next generation leadership in China, and with links with the European Union.
Now, I guess there are lots of men and women listening and saying, well, this sounds all very amazing. I wonder though, can you perhaps be a bit more concrete in the sense that you're saying this program will help women to really reach this executive pipeline, but how exactly can it add value to the mentees' development?
So we're going to share the floor on this one with Rachel, as with any question, I would guess. The first thing about the program is for mentees or candidates to know what they are looking for. If we have people coming and just saying, I would like to go to the next ladder, but I don't really understand how to do that. And the point is not to know all the detailed steps. The point is to be clear about your environment, who you are, and what you can do from that. So Rachel, I leave you the floor, because maybe so I can elaborate after that, but I know you had a strong point about networking, and I think it's important to share with the audience.
So when we looked at the applications, what we wanted people, and we will go into this more, we wanted people to do was explain what they wanted as the next steps of their career. So to give you a couple of examples, we had somebody who had a tax background, and they said, well, you know, I obviously understand tax, legal, I understand finance, but what I want to do is become a CFO. And I don't really know what the steps are. I mean, there aren't, so part of the issue is, and I think it's become more intense since Me Too, is that mentoring tends to be a very informal thing. It's usually somebody in your company who taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, you know, you're quite good. You know, you could do this, or perhaps you'd be good at that. And because many of the people who are in leadership are men, often that could happen over a golf game or over a drink, or, you know, at a karaoke bar. And sometimes women who have to run home, you know, or have extra other responsibilities can be left out of that process of mentoring, not deliberately, just because, you know, we tend to gravitate towards people who are like us. So what we wanted to do was create a process where if you are, for instance, and you're on the next webinar, you'll hear from Gloria Joe, who's the strategy director at BP, and Jorg, about their mentor-mentee relationship. And Gloria was somebody that I approached because she was a client of mine, and I said, you know, do you know about this program? I think you should join us. I think you should apply, because you have all the assets and talents that you would need to progress to executive level. And this could be really helpful for you. And what Gloria said was, what she got out of it, she was looking at how you move from strategy director to the executive committee. And what she got out of it was how you talk as a Chinese person to headquarters and get your message through. And I think one of the things that everybody grapples with, regardless of where you are, which industry, what level of your company, one of the dissonances that everyone's dealing with in China is, how do you explain the different reality on the ground in China from the reality in Europe? And I think it's something that the best leaders, people like Jorg, have built a career on, is bridging that, you know, bridging that divide. And so what we want to do is give people the skills to move from where they are currently. And that might be a technical director. We had somebody who was only 3 years into their career. And she had a PhD, she had a background in AI, and we matched her with the head of BP because they both had a science and research background. But she was very clear. She said, I'm a research scientist. I've got this very august career, but I don't know enough about business. I want to know, how do I add the skills I need to my career to start moving out of the silo I'm in? So what we're looking for is people who want to think more broadly about where they want to go, but they're not quite sure about how to do that. And our job is to match them with someone who can help them get to where they'd like to be.
And if I go a bit further on that, actually, so this question is crucial. And actually, mentorship is not about training or coaching, but even with not being that, there might be some more personal points that you are touching upon. Mm-hmm. And typically, it's a question about knowing yourself, knowing your organization, and how to navigate in this respect, which makes a link with the networking and the ability to communicate, but makes also the link with daring, simply daring. Sometimes you need an external view, because all what Rachel was describing, it is something that we can give clues on, but at the end of the day, you are building your own career, you are building your own steps. But then sometimes you just stop because you feel, well, this is not for me. How could I do that? How would I dare? And why not, actually? To me, the question is really, why wouldn't you try? And you just give it a go. Obviously, you need to assess some assumptions. Should you go a way or another? But that's really about how do you build your own strategy to go to the next step.
So are you kind of arguing that sometimes women have to be pushed to embrace risk, to get out there, to be more visible, to work on their brand and look for different opportunities? And you think the mentoring program could help them with developing such skills?
I think so. Actually, it shows them also, and that's the idea of matching them with other people, whether they are men or women. Mm-hmm. What they will see, just simply also by having that kind of discussion, is that this is possible. I mean, we all come from different backgrounds, and it was not set in the ground that we would go to that kind of jobs. And then yet we are there. And we did not do that by killing people on the road, by if you like, refusing our own value. You can still progress being yourself and I mean, having the competence you have and developing them further to the benefit of the organization.
Now, you just mentioned matching.
Yeah.
And having been myself a mentor and a mentee, I realized that sometimes there comes up this question of trust and confidentiality, that you wonder, can you actually trust that person, if depending on if the person is in the same industry or in a competitor industry? How do you make sure that this does not happen, that these kind of concerns do not come up within the EU Chamber mentoring program?
Well, it's obviously a delicate question, but first of all, what we do is that we formalize confidentiality of the discussion between the mentor and the mentee. So both commit to the discussions to be confidential. Now, ahead of the matching, what we are doing is avoiding any form of competition between a mentor and a mentee. And sometimes it's a bit, I mean, the line can be quite thin, because some industries can be sister companies, or there might be some stuff like that. So we are really we avoided that last year, clearly. We do a check also with the mentor, and what can happen actually is a bit of a specific situation. In case, we didn't have the case last year, but just to be clear on that, it may happen that a mentee finds out that her mentor is a close friend of her manager, for instance. Mm-hmm. And then it raised some questions. So in that respect, we really want the mentee to be able to raise the point, and so we can, ahead of the matching, be fine with that and avoid any form of, let's say, discomfort, because that wouldn't be competition, but that would put a doubt on the confidentiality of the discussion.
Well, great. Thank you for outlining this. Being conscious of the time, since half an hour has passed, just a kind reminder to everyone that you're encouraged to ask any questions that you might have. Rachel and Charlotte will be happy to answer them. Now, in the meantime, I go on, and I would like to take a step back and kind of look at mentoring a bit more from, let's say, a bird's eye perspective. And I was wondering, when do you think does mentoring really add most value to a mentee? Is there a specific way of executing a mentoring relationship or activity?
I think it really depends on both the mentee and the mentor, and I would start by the mentee, actually, because it's about the mentee and how the program benefits to her. I would concur with what Jörg was saying to me, but that's a personal view, probably. It has more value when you have face-to-face meetings. It's really different than to have, I mean, we all experience online meetings, and you lose a lot of things in that respect. You go straight to the point, but then the idea is also to capture other elements, to be more fine in your answers. So to me, it goes really this way. So the way we designed the program was to say, well, we want to make sure that mentors dedicate at least 5 to 6 hours in a 6-month period to their mentee, and we give preference to face-to-face meetings. And actually, despite COVID, it worked quite well. So, and some mentors and mentees were not in the same city, but they still managed to go ahead. And as you understood from Jörg, and it's the same on my side, the relationship is going on. Because the trust, to go back to your previous question, was built quite quickly. And we could go ahead and see what would be possible for the future for those mentees. So I don't know, Rachel, if you want to add something on that?
I think that to get the most out of it, and this may be a question that you were going to ask later anyway, Sarah, the mentee needs to be quite proactive, to have a clear sense of their own career, where they're going, what the questions are, you know, and I just, you know, an anecdote from somebody who was informally a mentor to me. I remember all this work being piled on me, and I, you know, I had childcare commitments, and, you know, sending her an IM and saying, listen, I've got this situation and I don't know what to do. And look, you know, your boss just wants a solution. So he's thrown this at you. Provide a solution. Explain to him how you're going to outsource this. Go and find like 3 providers, cost it, go back to him and tell him, this is how much it will cost you. I will manage the process. You won't have to deal with any of it, and it will get done. And it just wouldn't, I think sometimes when you are in the middle of you know, you're in the middle of your career, you know, you're in the middle of work, you're very close to the situation, you're often quite tired in China and you're working long hours. Just that outside perspective can be very helpful. One of the other things I wanted to raise, because it came up with a number of the applications that Charlotte and I looked at, what we're looking for is someone who's very clear about where they are, who they are, and where they would like to be, and what, you know, what their questions are that they'd like answered. So one of the things that sort of came up a lot was people saying, well, I'm the mentee, so you should be telling me what to do. But that's what your manager does. He's your boss, he tells you what to do. Mentor can help you think through where you know, the journey that you're on, but the mentor isn't going to be putting the next steps in front of you. They may just be helping you take those next steps more gracefully. The other thing that we asked in our application was that mentees explain what they had to offer a mentor. Because to some degree, these things are a two-way relationship. I know Jörg has said to me that he really, really enjoys mentoring, and he feels that it gives him a sense of purpose. But I think everybody, whether you come from a tax background, a legal background, a strategy background, a marketing background, or a communications background, all of you have something to offer. And of developing your own career is thinking about what your own skills are. You won't be able to ascend to a management position if you can't tell anybody what you can do. So part of the sort of process of applying was, you know, are you very detailed oriented and you understand the Chinese tax code, or, you know, and you can sort of explain the sort of pitfalls that might happen. Are you very good at marketing and you've thought very carefully a lot about WeChat and the social media landscape and how it's changing in the middle of COVID? I mean, there must be, everybody has something that makes them uniquely themselves. And I think one of the things that we would like to challenge mentees to do is to think about what that thing is. And we're not going to be judgmental about what it is, but we did actually have a couple of applications where the application said, I don't understand this question. You should be telling me what to do. And that's something that your boss, your manager, your line manager will tell you what to do, but your mentor can't, because he's not in your company and he doesn't know, or she does not know the ins and outs of your job.
So you're basically saying that this program just matches two people and then gives the mentee and also the mentor the opportunity to really make the most out of it by shaping it the way they find it most suitable for these two persons. Does that also mean that there is no further structure, so to say, for the program as such? Are there any sort of initiative meetings with everyone, or is it just really like you have half a year and you can just use the time however you want to do it, or is there a certain set of regular meetings that should be attended?
There are. So actually last year we had a number of workshops because we wanted to accompany the mentees in their leadership process, I would say, or progress. And so actually we are going to do the same this year, probably focusing even more on leadership, mentoring, women leadership. Mm-hmm. Because actually last year we had some workshop and they were quite interesting, but about, in a way, widely business, and that kind of thing can be done also in the shape of the company. So the idea is really to focus more on those points, and the workshops are for all mentees. So the idea is for them to be able to meet together and to discuss, to see also how they are progressing. I mean, if they are happy with the program, if we need to reshape something. That's what we did last year. And again, we are doing it this year, but probably in a slightly different shape, to focus more on what can not be offered in the same format in their company.
Now I wonder, there might be lots of women in here that think, oh, that sounds really interesting, but actually I'm not sure, I don't dare, I might only fulfill 70% of the criteria, so to say. I might not.
And so what? That's the point. The answer is really to them. I mean, why not? Again, so if they are interested, it means that the program can bring them something. So that's really something they should apply to. I mean, it's a selective program, so we cannot ensure that everybody will get a seat. But I mean, you don't have to fulfill 100% of the criteria. And as Rachel mentioned, we had a candidate last year, and she was a mentee, and she didn't fill the criteria, but she filled most of them. And most of all, she had really this ambition, this willingness to go further. She was, what is absolutely a must is to be employee in a EU chamber company. So that is a must. But for the rest, we will see. And definitely, again, if you tick most of the box you are interested, you should apply for sure.
Now, we actually had one mentee last year, actually, who was not an EU member company, but they were committed to China, and they were such a strong candidate that we thought, no, they were an EU member company, member company, but they weren't an advisory board member. And so we are open to casting our net widely for talent.
Now, you said yourself just a moment ago, this is a very selective program. Of course, you have a lot of high-level stellar mentors like yourself that will be in the program. I wonder, can you tell us a bit more about the selection process and how you will in the end deal with very strong applications? How will you make a final decision as to who gets which mentor?
Yeah, it's really about the criteria we set up. So first we need a commitment to China. That's what we want, developing the next generation leadership. So someone who is telling us, well, I'm here for, again, 1 year, I've been there 2 years ago, I arrived 2 years ago, can be someone really good, but probably not fit for this program. So this is not someone who will get a preference. So the idea is really to go through all what we just said. So we want someone, so ideally between 30 and 45-year-old, targeting a C-level position so that we can help shaping the view on how to get to the next step. And as Rachel mentioned, we are not the manager. So really the idea is to get an external view on how best to manage this and what to work upon. Preference is given to advisory council member, but this is just a preference, meaning that, so actually Rachel mentioned that we had a mentee last year, not from an AC member company, AC being the top membership in the EU chamber, but we also had a candidate from an AC member and who probably was not that appetized by the program. So we couldn't really match her with anybody. We couldn't select her. So what makes the difference is your profile, your appetite, what you want to achieve, what you are willing to bring to the program. Again, a must is being an employee of an EU chamber company. And then the question of AC member, we give preference if we can, but that comes at the end if we need to select and between strong application.
what we're really looking for is a strong personal statement that explains who you are and where you want to be. So last year, the AC member that applied that didn't make the grade had a very impressive CV, but had not asked the question about what they wanted to get out of this program and why they wanted to do it. And without that, it's very hard for us to make the decision about which mentor we should match you with. So I think part of it, you know, the mentors that we've got are very senior, they're very busy, and we want to make sure that those 5 or 6 hours are really well used.
Now you just mentioned a CV and a motivation letter. What kind of documents do you need to submit to be able to be considered as an applicant?
So actually it's about sending a CV, definitely. There is a sort of motivation letter, which is rather a personal statement, as Rachel mentioned. We have a number of questions, so it helps normally getting through the process, saying what you expect from the program, what you want to achieve, what you could bring to your mentor, that kind of thing. And all of that will be on the website. So we are, I think it's, if it's not live now, it will be just after our webinar, but then candidates can find everything in that respect.
I would also encourage people, if there's anybody listening to this when you look, who looks at the statement and isn't quite sure what the next steps are, if you do get in touch with Nina Jiang at the chamber and you want to refer a question to me, I'm very happy to drop people an email and explain what's needed. We really do want to encourage people, wherever they are in their career, if they're in the right age band and they're ambitious and they want to move out of the silo that they're currently in or the role that they're currently in and up the chain to management, we want you to think about applying for this.
Now, when you kind of, if you had 3 words, how do you think does this program add value to a woman's professional career that is listening now? What are kind of the 3 top words that come into your head, Charlotte and Rachel?
I would say that so it's not 3 words, but it helps taking a step back. I think that's important when you are in your career. You look very much at your sector, you listen very much to your manager, hopefully to your team as well, but you have difficulty to take a step back. If you want to go to the next step, you really want to have a broader view, and that's what mentorship can bring you, because you will meet with different people with a different perspective, and it will help you in this respect. So I would say that's widening the scope, very probably. It's also about, from what I experience, about trust. The trust you can build in a relationship with someone who is very senior and consider that you are fine, so why not? And then it's about the trust you can have in yourself. Again, there's no reason why you shouldn't dare. I mean, what happens? You dare and it doesn't work, and so what? Then you dare another time and it will work, and that's fine. So that would be those 3 things.
Wonderful. And Rachel, how would you summarize the value that you get out of this program?
I think inspiration and confidence. So if you do get selected, last year we actually shortlisted people. So if we don't have enough mentors and there are strong candidates, we're hoping to roll this every few months. And so, you know, we would encourage people to reapply and keep applying. But yeah, inspiration. I think sometimes just talking to someone who's done it, who's walked that path ahead of you, and who understands the difficulties that they've negotiated and can help you, as you know, think about how you could be somebody bigger, do something different. I think that's really important. And I think confidence. I think the mere fact of being selected is really is a bit of a confidence boost, and it's useful. But I know that Gloria, and I know she's going to talk about this at the next webinar, she said that these conversations with Jörg really helped her think about how she needed to talk to management about China. And you know, if you're sitting in a conference room in Europe, and I'm sitting in the UK, you know, one of us from Germany, one of us from France, things in Europe just move much, much more slowly than they do in China. And China speed is really, China speed, China complexity, China's contradictions. These are really, really hard things for management in Europe to grasp, even when they're working hard at it. So part of moving up the chain in a European company is being able to explain those things to people who need to know. And I think that's one of the things that, that this program can give people.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, ladies, for this great summary. Now we're good on time. We have 15 minutes left. So this is your last chance to all the participants that are watching to ask questions. There are no stupid questions. Please go ahead and ask whatever you find relevant at this stage. And in the meantime, I just wanted to inform you, as also just mentioned by Rachel, if this whole session was a bit too theoretical for you and you would really like to just meet a mentee and mentor and understand how such a session could look like, then I very much encourage you to join us on the 18th of September. This is when we will have our second webinar. As I said in the beginning, this is a trilogy, and there will even be a third one, which will basically be a panel of the mentors that we have this year and / last year. And in the next webinar, we will basically talk about the lessons learned, the practical experiences that both the mentor and mentee enjoyed. But we'll also look a bit at content questions, like the importance of visibility, of personal branding, how women can enhance this skill, the importance of grit and resilience, and many other topics. So we are very excited to welcome you then as well. Now, as there are no further questions, there is
a question.
Yes, indeed. During this selection process, is there a stage where you have a face-to-face interview, online interview? Who would like to answer this?
So I can start actually, and Rachel, you complete. But last year we didn't have. I think we had some contacts with some candidates to check a few points if something wasn't clear. But the point is really to go through the application process as explained through the documents that we are asking for. So again, I know that some contacts were taken to clarify a few points, but there is no such thing as a face-to-face interview. Rachel, I don't know if you want to complete.
Yeah, what we were looking for was a match in terms of skills. So for instance, I said that, you know, tax lawyer who wanted to be a CFO, with a CFO, we were looking for people who had a clear idea of where they wanted to be. And then what we were looking, you know, we know the mentors quite well. And so we were looking for people who would be able to help that mentee get to where they're going to go or want to go. That could be, it could be somebody, as I said, somebody who was very senior and was looking, you know, we had people who were like, I want to be CFO, I want to be CEO. I'm like 2 steps below the C-suite, and that's where I want to go. So at the top level, we had a couple of applications like that. And then we had, as I said, people who were fairly early in their career who were asking questions like, well, you know, I'm a research scientist. You know I'm very technically capable, but I need to round out my business experience, and what do I need to do?
Thank you. Now we have actually another question that was asked in the meantime. How long is this program? Will it take 6 months or a year?
So the program last year, so obviously was a bit longer than expected due to COVID-19, but the idea is to work during 6 months. So we have 5 to 6 hours with the mentors and the mentee. It can be more, but the idea is that mentors, as Rachel explained, there are people who are very busy. They commit at least to that, to have meetings all along those 6 months. And meanwhile, we have also, during this period of time, some workshops with all mentees on a regular basis. So that's the way we did. Yeah. Sorry, Rachel.
Want to stress, and we did last year, and I'm sure we will do again, is we kicked off the program with a training session for both mentors and mentees, to help people understand how to be a good mentee, how to be a good mentor. We didn't just sort of throw you into it, but we worked with Laurie, who's a coach who had headed up the European Chambers HR Forum, but we will offer a session to mentees when we get started to explain how you get the most out of the relationship with your mentor, what you can ask and what you can't ask, you know, what's the right way to approach it. So we're not just going to throw you in the deep end.
Wonderful, thank you. Now it seems there are no further questions. I give you a last minute if you want to think about it. And I invite you, Rachel and Charlotte, then perhaps in the meantime to kind of end the session by sharing your final thoughts or comments. How can you really encourage all these women to apply? Oh, before you go ahead, allow me to read out this last question. Is this program for both foreign and Chinese applicants?
Absolutely.
It can be, yeah, it can be for both. The point is really the commitment to China, as we mentioned. So what we don't want is to have people just doing that to make their time a bit busy, and then they leave China within 6 months or 1 year, so they have those 6 months to fulfill. That's not the point. But really the idea is to open to people committed to China in the long run.
So we did last year. Yeah, it's open to Chinese and foreign applicants, absolutely. We're not discriminating on race any more than gender. The majority of the applicants last year were Chinese, because we're in China, and so therefore the majority of the mentees were Chinese. We did actually have one applicant who was based in Paris and wanted to come back to China. And I think logistically, we didn't think we could make that work. But, you know, if somebody is stuck outside the country, which is not unlikely in the current situation. But you are going to be returning to China. You have a China-based career. This is where you see, you know, we do feel free to apply. I see there's a question about how to prepare the application materials to make it more competitive. I think just clarity of thought. We're not going to mark you down for spelling mistakes. You don't have to write this perfectly. We're not looking at your formatting. What we want to see is that you know who you are, you know what your skills are, and you have a clear idea about where you want to go. You don't have to know how to get there. I think part of this program is for us to help you on the next steps of your career. But we do want a clear vision of what your skills are and what value you think they offer to both your company and the European China business community in general, and what it is you want to do with your career, whether that's a 1 or 2 year vision. So some people just wanted to be better at their current job, and we had one person who, you know, she just wanted to be a better manager. She wanted to kind of do the job better, have a bigger role in the current sector. You don't have to want to be CEO, although we would obviously be delighted if that's where you were. But I think wherever you are in your career, there's a very big difference between being 45 and being 30. So do feel free wherever you are to put your hat in. The key thing is a clarity of thought and vision about where you are, what you have to offer, and where you want to be.
And you just talked about skill set. Is there a specific skill set that you are looking for that might give you an advantage?
No,
I don't think so.
The skill set is rather to allow a better matching. But it's not about, I mean, we don't give preference to, I don't know, engineers, by preference to communication people, not at all. So the point is really to have the best matching selection process.
The one thing I should add is we did actually last year have a couple of really strong candidates apply from one company. And so maybe that you apply and there's somebody else from your company. We can't give 2 mentee slots to somebody from one company because it would look like that. So it may be that we have to shortlist somebody for the next program. And yes, in fact, I think there were 2 companies that had 2 strong applicants each, and we were only able to pick one of them.
Okay, but then they can, of course, apply for the 3rd cycle.
Yeah.
Now, being conscious of the time, I would now invite you, unless there are any final questions, I would now invite you, Charlotte and Rachel, perhaps just to wrap up by giving us a short final statement as to why these women listening right now should apply.
Well, I think it's just a wrap-up point. It's what we said a bit earlier. The idea of this program is to support you in your career development and to support you by giving you the opportunity to take a step back, to reflect, and to know how best to interact with EU companies and actually more widely different sectors, because your mentor will be from a different sector. So it's an opportunity for you to develop your career and develop yourself. And I think that's quite important. It's on a limited period of time, so you need to be clear on what you want to achieve. And we are there in this respect.
Fantastic. And Rachel, any last words?
So I think hopefully some of you who've signed up and listened to this whole webinar heard Jorge Budka at the beginning talking about how important he thought diversity was. I think this is a great opportunity to talk to business leaders in the European community and make connections that will help you think more broadly, not just about your career, but about China-European relations. This is a really difficult time that we're entering. I was talking to a client of mine about a webinar last week, and the kind of risks that people are looking at in terms of geopolitics, in terms of sector, in terms of technological change. I think we're it's an unprecedented era. And so to be able to talk to somebody more senior, more seasoned, who can help you think more broadly, not just about your career, but about the world, would be really valuable. So we really do encourage you to apply.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much to both of you. Thank you very much to the participants in today's session. I was really delighted to have these founding mothers of this mentoring program, so to say, here in the session and share their experience and insights. And we do hope that we were able to convince you that you should apply so you can benefit from this fantastic program, which will help you to unleash your potential. And if you have any further questions, as said, please join our next 2 webinars. In fact, the next webinar will even be physical, most likely. Further information will follow shortly. And in the meantime, feel free to scan the QR code that you can now see in front of you. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.